Hey, it's Anfa, and this is a little news flash live stream. As you might have heard, Audacity has been recently acquired by a new company called Muse Group, and a YouTuber named, what's his name? Tantacruel has made a video where with a thumbnail saying, "I have just joined Audacity." What I think really should be the title is, "My company just bought Audacity." He's previously also joined the... previously, like, I don't know, it was 2 years ago, where he started working with MuseScore developers to help push the software forward. I believe they proposed him to join them when he made a video criticizing MuseScore and showing what the bad things and the good things about MuseScore's user interface. And now it's Audacity. And when I saw that, I was pretty excited, and a lot of people were. But then something weird happened, and that is on Audacity's GitHub project, there's a new pull request titled Basic Telemetry for the Audacity. And it was opened 4 days ago, and it has 926 comments. And when I saw that, I thought, well, that sounds like a bad joke. And yeah, the current state of this peer request is that it has been changed a few times because of the replies, because the replies and the reaction of the community was pretty violent. And I think that's to be expected. So right now they say, "Dear all, due to the large amount of worry about this PR, which we completely understand, we want to clarify exactly what is going on. Telemetry is strictly optional and disabled by default. No data is shared unless you choose to opt in and enable telemetry. Telemetry only works in the builds made by GitHub CL from the official repo. The telemetry URLs are only defined there. If you are compiling Audacity from source, we will provide a CMake option to enable the telemetry code. This option will be turned off by default." That sounds pretty okay, but let's say you want to enable telemetry because you want to help them identify what options in Audacity, what functions are used the most, and you want them to be able to use that information to make Audacity better. Then your data will be sent to Google and Yandex because they're using Google Analytics. So blah, blah, blah. Regarding the concerns about the choice of providers, we do not incorporate cross-site tracking, limiting the ability to identify the user by both Google and Yandex. Yandex will only receive the application opened event to help us estimate the size of the user base. Google would only receive only just this: session start and end events, errors for debugging, file formats used for import and export, OS and Audacity versions, and use of effects, generators, and analysis tools to prioritize future improvements. Pretty much anything you click on Audacity, except for editing, and like, changing volumes of tracks, is going to be sent to Google. We will consider replacing Google and Yandex with another service if we find one that fulfills all our requirements. Thanks for the suggestions and keep them coming. Yes, there's been a lot of suggestions from the community to use different providers for such stuff because there are truly open source ways to do telemetry, but Google Analytics and Yandex are not one of them. Just to reiterate, telemetry is completely optional. Of course it is optional, but then if we want to help Audacity grow, then we are feeding the Google behemoth with the data, because their business is just knowing stuff about people. And that's like Google already knows too much about it. So also there's also there, but you know that it's not just the problem that they're like originally want to use Google Analytics and Yandex. There's also technical problems, which I don't fully understand because I'm not a programmer. But technical people has raised concerns about that they are using like they're not going to be using the system provided version of libcurl, and they're going to be providing their own version of libcurl. Why? I don't know. They explain this to address the concerns about the use of private library versions. The largest part of this pull request is a networking layer built on top of libcurl. This library is chosen as it is an industry standard for cross-platform networking, is exceptionally tested and reviewed by industry experts. Layer on top of it, aka a lib network manager, meant to simplify the development of future features. libcurl is used without any patches. It's possible to use the self-system provided version of the library available on Linux distributions, and we will double check if this works as expected. Double check that this works as expected. Original PR description. So this is what they posted. This provides basic telemetry. Basic. To me, that's this is basic. My definition of basic telemetry is, oh, someone ran an application. Oh, it crashed. That's basic telemetry in my book. But to them, pretty much clicking on anything is considered to be basic stuff. So I don't know what is detailed telemetry by these standards. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and you can see the summary is pretty simple here. It's 3,200 downvotes on this PR. I'm really not surprised that the community is very concerned about this, and I am very concerned about this myself. Jan Bernard comments, but Google is professional for analytics tools. Okay, maybe it is, but they have bought a free and open source project, and they claimed to be keeping it open source, free and open source, and they need to follow like the spirit of free and open source software. And the community of people using Audacity don't think Google is a good tool to do your analytics in free and open source software. And yeah, it might have convenient tools, and I'm sure they did this out of convenience and not of like having any, it's not like Google is paying them to provide information. That would be ridiculous. Google is just paying people with providing free services, so they feed it with its data. And I feed Google with my data too, unfortunately. But I don't want to be feeding Google any data when I'm using free and open source software. And like, yeah. Blah, blah, blah. 4 hours ago. No, these are pretty new, 4 days ago. Basically, there's an enormous... Wow, have these been cleaned up? I don't see all of the comments. That's pretty weird. There's been a lot of comments, and some very, very nasty ones, which I don't think is like wishing people death over this is really a stupid. But yeah, like I trust that Muse Group is going to reconsider their choices of implementing this and find the ways that the free and open source community will approve. But they may not. They can do whatever they want. If they don't figure out ways to do this the right way, respecting people's choice to use providers like Google and Yandex, then what's going to happen is Audacity will be forked. And people like me and other people who are concerned about this and want to use free and open source software without telling Google about it every time you type in farts on your keyboard, are going to use that version. The problem is that I think realistically, they may not they may not be very concerned, because we, as the open source community, are probably a very small part of the Audacity's user base. I think Audacity is being used by millions of people, and probably like 10% of them even know what free and open source software means. And I think the new Audacity maintainers don't really know. Like, the real question that emerges from all of this is, does Muse Group even understand what the free software movement is all about? And I hope the answer is not yet, because if the answer is yes, then after that yes, we need to add, but they don't give a shit. Well, yeah, I really hope we can resolve this in a peaceful manner, that that the new Audacity maintainers from Muse Group can review their choices and implement this telemetry in a sane and free and open source friendly way. Because I would like to use Audacity and I would like to help them improve it. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it, or I was excited to see what they're going to do with it, because its user interface is admittedly clunky. And of course it is simple, but also there's a lot that could be done to make it better. Yet, if the first thing they want to do is make me tell Google every time I run Audacity, actually, no, Yandex, then not really. Okay, and even it is opt-in, but do I really want to run software that's gonna phone Google when I want to help the developers? No, I don't. I really hope we can resolve this, and that the Muse Group developers are going to figure this out and use some tools that they can host themselves. And yeah, maybe it's not going to be as convenient, but this is a free and open source project, and people expect some like standard of respecting like people's privacy, and we are a bit paranoid about huge data eating corporations like Google, and most of us are trying to limit the amount of data we feed to Google, not increase that amount of data. And sure, we might say that, well, this is not going to have too much impact, because for every 1% of people who are aware that this is a problem, there's 99% people who don't know that that's a problem and don't care. So it's not going to change anything. But, you know, every change starts with something small. So I think it is worth paying attention to this. And the wrong Muse Group. Yeah, if you have the time and want to have some fun, I don't know, or like learn more about this, you may go to Audacity's GitHub repository into pull requests and read into that. So maybe refrain from commenting anymore, because there's already way too much stuff here, and I think everything that has been said in this should have been said in this thread already has been said. Even so, people are commenting every hour still, even though it's been 4 days. Yeah. Also, I think I'm gonna read some chat and answer some questions if I can. That is because yeah, they probably did it it's just because it was easy to do. Yeah, I fully agree. I think they just did it because it was convenient. But the thing is that if you are into free and open source software, if you're running Linux, if you are into privacy, and you understand the dangers of tracking users everywhere, and advertisers knowing about you more than your spouse or mother, then doing something like this is a huge red flag. And to me, the fact that they published this pull request, which means, hey, here's code, just click OK and we're going to merge it and it goes into the next build, shows that they don't really have the mindset of a free and open source project. which is worrying because they like Trantakrul in his video, I don't know, sorry. Sorry for mispronouncing your nickname. Stated that they stated that this project will stay free and open source, and they're gonna work on ways to improve it for everyone. But this is strictly opposed to the free and open source way of doing things, which is like, what? Like, you put Google tracking in free and open source software, and you think that's gonna be just fine with us? So yeah, some people in the comments, which I've been reading before, mentioned that this should be just published on a wiki article in the Google, or like it should be published as a proposal, and it should be discussed with the community how it's going to be implemented and all the other stuff. But it was just a pull request. So as it sits now, we don't know what's going to happen with this. Maybe they'll back off and rework this. I hope they will, but who knows? Looks like Jan Bernard has a lot of interesting points. So he says, advanced telemetry is mouse tracking, click heat map, media metadata, full hardware configuration. All right, okay. Yeah, that's just full-on surveillance. And I think doing something like that on like regular users without like very, very explicit explanation on what the program is going to do is fucking crazy. Like doing stuff like that, in my opinion, is only acceptable if you're basically hiring testers and you're telling them, okay, we're going to be tracking all your mouse clicks and what you do and everything. And that's okay in this environment. But like, if you say, like, just put a window, hey, do you want to send anonymous data? Okay. And it just tracks every fucking click you do. No, that is not okay. Jan Bernard says, self-hosting is expensive. Okay, but you know what? This is probably this may turn into a PR crisis for them, so I don't know what's more expensive. Like $5 a month would probably rent them enough VPS power to do this, or maybe $20 a month. So I don't think it's really a point. The point is convenience, I think. They did this out of convenience. And yep, doing things the right way is less convenient, always. But it doesn't matter. Jan Bernard says, heat map is a really useful data, for example, to see where people click to make a better interface. Oh yeah, that's great. But to do this, like, I think they could do something like that. But first thing, it would need to be a special build, which is like marked. This is a heat map testing build. If you want to help us, download this and it will track every click you make. And also not send it for Google. And then I'm okay. I could even use that build and help them do it. Just Be Memorable asks, what did I miss? You can replay. Also, Jan Bernard says, Anfa, can you stream to 100 plus people without Google YouTube? I think I could. There are open source self-hostable things. I've been using PeerTube a bit. It's not ready, though. And that's kind of not the point because, I have joined this platform here, YouTube, knowing what I'm putting myself into. And I have to take this, and I'm taking this because it's a platform that lets me talk to people and lets me spread the information about free and open source software while I wait for free and open source alternatives to match the feature standard and allow me to provide a sensible alternative. And yeah, I've been doing some tests on open source platforms, namely PeerTube. PeerTube isn't yet ready yet for live streaming, but there are some other ways, like, I don't know. There's a bunch of them. I haven't tested much, but there's options. And, you know, the argument that, but you're using Google anyway, is invalid, because I do this, like, this is a conscious choice on my side. And everyone who came here also made a conscious choice to create an account on YouTube, knowing it's owned by Google. And they know that they are being tracked here. Everything we do here is tracked, and we are feeding Google. But when you run a piece of free and open source software, you do not expect to be feeding Google. And that is not okay, because they're not telling you that this data is being sent to Google in the dialogue proposed here. They, like, right? Like, I've seen programs that do this kind of stuff, open source programs that do this kind of stuff, and what is the right thing to do is, I think, or one way to do, is that the program creates, opens up a website, creating a GitHub ticket, for example, or a forum thread, and it fills out some data it collected in your system for you, and you can review exactly every single bit of that information before you post it. So it's fully transparent, and there is no third party involved. It's just you, the platform that the developers use to host and develop their software or discuss their development, and the developers, and not some Google or Yandex server in the middle that you're not aware of. Like, I'm okay with using Google, but when I'm aware of it, I'm not okay with Google being utilized inside of free and open source software that I use and I have no idea. For example, maybe it's not relevant, but Ardor, the digital audio workstation that I use and I teach, some time ago has added a set of proprietary plugins developed by Harrison, who are creating a DAW called Harrison Mixbus, which is based on Ardor, but they have their proprietary DSP inside and a different mixer interface that emulates their analog consoles. And they've been very nice and provided some proprietary plugins that they use in their DAW, Mixbus, so it can be used in Ardor as well. But these plugins are not open source. So in their binary code, in practice, like, there could be anything. They could be tracking me if I run these plugins. I have no idea. That's why I've been fighting Ardor developers to make it optional to install these, because they were just installed. You had no idea. They were just there. You download a piece of open source software which is advertised, free and open source software, and you have no idea that there is a chunk of proprietary code inside which could be doing whatever, because the developers, even of the software, were not able to fully review it because they don't have access to the source code. That's not okay. I'm okay with doing things like that when I'm fully aware of it. And I guess a lot of people will be okay with installing these Harrison XT plugins, but I don't want to. And they've added, Ardor developers since added an option to make installing these plugins optional on Linux. I don't know if they added the option to make this optional on Windows yet, but I think they should. Because, like, I know that people running Windows are probably less tuned to be less aware of such issues, and they won't mind probably. But we are the free and open source software community. We should be taking care of people even if they don't realize the danger. Let me read the comments or the chat. Neon Ray Tracer, the tracking will be a conscious choice. You need to enable it while building. Audacity by default from this PR won't be tracking anything. Yes, it won't be tracking anything by default, but if I want to help them, the only way that I can do this using their telemetry is through Google, if this goes in as it is right now. And I want to help them, and I would like to enable this, but it's not anonymous really, because Google will know your IP, and Google has enough data on you and your profile that they will be able to stitch this together, because they will see that you're also watching Audacity tutorials right now, or browsing Freesound and uploading audio and whatever. Google knows too much. And if they can just swap out these proprietary data hoarding services out to something open and approved by the free and open source community, then okay. Yeah, sure. I want to help improve Audacity, just not for these companies. And yeah. Also, if they would like to do heat mapping and, tracking every click, I'm also okay, but it needs to be a separate build. And it also cannot go through such services. Like, I would like to help them and produce a heat map from my work. Sure, just not through Google. All right. Okay, I think I'll wrap this up. I think I've said everything I had to say. Yay. This is a big oof on the part of Muse Group. And I really hope they learned the lesson and that they listen to the free and open source community. I hope we can keep this civilized. Please no death threats over this. It's not worth it. It's just a piece of software, okay? The worst case scenario, we will fork it and we will be just porting over changes. I know it sucks. And it would be really sad that Audacity, after 30 years, would go this route. But it's not the end of the world. Still, I am hopeful, and I trust the Muse Group can learn from this, can take the best parts of the feedback that has been provided, discard the toxic shit, and use the helpful feedback and understand why are we so concerned about doing telemetry this way. Banana Kid 111 asks, does this have to do with Tantacruel taking over? Absolutely. It's pretty much the result of him taking over. This is the first change we see after he took over. Yep. Also, I've learned that MuseScore, the program that I've been working on before, also has similar stuff in, but I just didn't know. So I think we need to talk about this, Muse Group. We need to talk about this. Okay. Thank you all for watching, and I hope it's all gonna be okay. I hope you're having a nice weekend, and let's hope for the best. Also, huge thanks to everyone who is supporting me on Patreon and LiberaPay. These guys are awesome. If any of you find my tutorials useful, please go there. You can give me $1 or $2. If not, just enjoy. And I hope to see you next time.